everybody, and welcome to the Weekly Scopes from the 8th into the 14th of June. Hi everybody, and welcome to this week's Weekly Scopes. If you've heard this before, you can skip, but this is just the intro on how I, formulate these astrology weekly readings. I use astrology and my intuition to give you advice how you can practically use the knowledge of the stars and the planets and apply them to your life. So my weekly scopes are all based on GMT time and on Vedic Constellational Astrology. So now I'm just going to explain what Vedic Constellation Astrology is and how it differs from Western astrology. So the precession of the equinox is sort of like something that happens in astronomy and astrology, where the Earth's axis undergoes a slow circular motion over 26,000 years, and basically this means that this motion causes a shift in the position of the equinoxes, and also the calculation Vedic and Western astrologies use. So around 2,000 years ago, the tropical and sidereal Vedic astrology signs of astrology were aligned in the same position. So if the sun was in Scorpio in Vedic astrology, it was also in the constellation of Scorpio in Western astrology. But because of the precession of the equinoxes, this has caused a gradual westward sort of like drift of the tropical Western signs. So basically these signs and the Western signs shift 1 degree with every 72 years. So as a result of this ongoing shift, when Western astrology says the sun is in the constellation of Pisces, it's typically in the constellation of Aquarius. Still, this is because the degree, orb and the date for Western and Vedic astrology are 24 degrees, 24 days apart. So in Western astrology, the sun enters the constellation of Pisces around the 19th of February each year, but actually the sun doesn't arrive into the constellation of Pisces until the 13th to the 15th of March each year. And Vedic astrology takes this into account because it's based on the fixed star positions, and Vedic astrologers use sidereal calculations. So as a result, Vedic astrology takes into account the actual positions of the constellations in the sky at any given time, and also considers the precession of the equinox, adjusting for the shift in the position of the equinoxes over time. But in terms of Western astrology follows the tropical zodiac, which is based on the seasons rather than fixed star positions. Western astrologers also do not directly account for the precession of the equinox in their calculations as well, so this results in slightly different calculations and interpretations that are given whether we're using Western astrology or Vedic astrology. So yeah, as I said, Western astrology uses specific dates, so every year, regardless of where the sun actually is at the sky, the sun moves into Pisces around the 19th of February. So yeah, this discrepancy, this misalignment between the tropical zodiac and the actual positions of the constellations has led to a discrepancy between Vedic astrology and Western astrology. So I consider the actual where the sun and the moon are and where Mars and Venus are at any given time, and this is how I formulate these sort of like weekly scopes. So yeah, thanks for listening to this, and let's dive into this week's weekly scope. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain what parallels and contra parallels are in astrology, because I use them in my chart interpretation. So declination in astrology is the measure of how far a celestial body is, such as the sun, whether it's either north or south of the celestial equator. And the celestial equator is an imaginary line in the sky above the Earth's equator, which us astrologers use in our interpretation. So parallels happen when two planets are on the same declination, either both planets are on the north side side, or either both planets are on the south side, and this alignment increases the influence of the involved planets. So it's similar to a conjunction aspect, as it amplifies their energy, making the effects of the planets more pronounced. Contraparallels, on the other hand, happen when two planets are on the same declination, but one is in the north and one is in the south. So this alignment creates tension, which is similar to an opposition aspect, and it can lead to conflict, challenges and inner struggles between the energies of the planets involved. So contraparallels highlight areas of friction or contrast in our lives, urging us to find balance between the opposing forces at play. When transiting parallels and contraparallels happen, they can sort of like trigger significant events, shifting consciousness and periods of intense growth and transformation. So I look at these aspects closely during chart analysis to understand how planetary energies interact and influence each other during a specific time frame, to pinpoint key periods for personal development, relationship dynamics or career shifts, and other shifts like karmic shifts and stuff like that. Because I just find using contraparallels and parallels gives me more depth in interpretation, so I use them. So contraparallels and parallels in astrology serve as markers for potential challenges or breakthroughs, guiding us towards more self-awareness, love, acceptance, understanding, forgiveness for ourselves and others, and shifts in consciousness and growth. So overall, just a shift in our mindset if we allow for it. So parallels and contraparallels just kind of like provide valuable insights into the complexities and nuances of the astrological interactions between planetary movements. So yeah, that's the end of what contraparallels and parallels are. Okay, so this week we've actually got quite a few aspects influencing us. So yeah, first we've got the Sun making a contraparallel to Pluto, which is the same as opposition, and this entered on the 24th of May, is exact at 7:04 p.m. on the 8th of June, and is also exact again on the 1st of July at 1:33 p.m. and leaves us completely on the 17th of July at 2:17 a.m. So as you can see, this is influencing us now for the next 5 to 6 weeks-ish, yeah. Then we've got Mars making a biquintal to Neptune, and this entered on the 8th of June, is exact at 4:41 a.m. on the 10th of June, and leaves us on the 12th of June. So, it's lasting us up until Friday this week, and Mars is in the constellation of Leo, and Neptune's in Pisces, and with the Sun contraparallel to Pluto, the Sun is also still in Taurus. And then we've got Mars making a trine to Chiron. This entered on the 8th of June, is exact on the 10th of June at 8:36 a.m. and again leaving us on the 12th of June, and Mars is in Leo and Chiron's in Aries. Venus is making a parallel to Chiron, and Venus is in Aries and Chiron is in Aries as well, because a parallel is the same as a conjunction, right? And this entered on the 4th of June and is exact on the 11th of June at 2:39 a.m. and leaves us on the 17th of June at 7:24. So really affecting us to about Tuesday, Wednesday next week. And then we've got the Sun making a parallel to Jupiter. This entered on the 26th of May, is exact on the 14th of June at 8:09 a.m. then exact again on the 28th of June at 8:09 p.m. and then leaves us completely on the 17th of June. So another one influencing us for about 5 to 6 weeks, and Jupiter's in Gemini. So we've got a lot of things influencing us, not only this week but for the rest of this month and early July as well. Okay, so with the Sun making a contraparallel to Pluto, this sets the stage with intense, transformative energy that lasts for weeks, challenging our core identities with the necessary evolution, growth, glow-up pressure that we sometimes need as humans to get outside of our comfort zone, right? And we've got quite a few Mars aspects that complements this deep background radiation of intensity, and then we've got a creative biquintal to Neptune and a healing trine to Chiron. So Mars is touching Neptune with a biquintal, a trine to Chiron, and this energy this week brings courageous healing to the midst, asking us to be brave, to face the things we've been putting off facing. Venus's parallel to Chiron brings relationship healing front and centre, and the Sun's parallel to Jupiter infuses everything with optimistic expansion growth potential. So this week is really giving Phoenix rising from the ashes vibes while making art about it energy. So cry ugly tears, and be down, but rise to those ashes and use art or creativity, drawing, dancing, singing, playing a piano, whatever, creating some music, whatever, to be a kind of reminder or validation of what you went through at this time, right? So positively with Mars, Neptune and Chiron, Mars is touching both Neptune and Chiron, relationships can become a catalyst and a container for profound transformation with the Venus Chiron energy, and the Mars Neptune Chiron gives us unusual creative approaches to healing ourselves, right? The Sun's parallel to Jupiter brings optimism and expansion and growth, which helps balance the intensity of the Sun-Pluto connection, right? So we can experience breakthroughs in how we channel our creativity, particularly in spiritual projects or just in doing therapy or personal development work, right? The challenge comes this week mainly from the Sun's conjunct parallel to Pluto, which can trigger power struggles, identity crises, or uncomfortable revelations about ourselves, and there may be tensions between our creative vision, right, which is represented by Mars and Neptune, and the practical steps we need to take for actually healing our problems. And the Venus Chiron parallel can expose relationship wounds in painful ways before the healing can actually begin. So this can bring like a paradox to our week, and we may not know how to deal with this energy completely. So the best way to ride this way's energy, a pro, is to approach the Sun-Pluto intensity with willingness rather than resistance to change, as it's trying to transform us, not break us, and with the Mars-Neptune biquintal, use creative healing practices like ritual movement. Google it, it's a Jungian dance technique, art therapy, dance therapy, creating art that expresses our spiritual insights. And the Mars-Chiron trine is perfect for courageous conversations about wounds or taking action to confront long-standing issues, and Venus's parallel to Chiron allows us to practice radical acceptance in relationships while maintaining healthy boundaries, and we can let the Sun's Jupiter parallel expand our vision of what healing and transformation can look like, In terms of the psychological meanings, it activates crucial psychological processes, the integration of our shadow material, the things we hide about our personal traits, scared to express, hiding from ourselves and others, and it wants us to heal the wounded masculine side of us, which is represented by the Mars Chiron energy, and it wants us to bring together, reconcile love with pain, the Venus Chiron energy. We are being asked to examine where our ego resists necessary change, while at the same time finding creative channels for our spiritual intuitions, which is represented by the Mars biquintal Neptune energy, and the Sun's parallel to Jupiter supports us growing psychologically, spiritually and emotionally this week, and having a more holistic approach to ourselves, how we view ourselves, rather than seeing ourselves as all bad or good, and hiding our shadow or just expressing our light. We realise that we can contain both light and shadow aspects, good personality traits, bad personality traits, and this is how we can accept that that people who we love sometimes can hurt us, but we don't accept them in a way that is toxic to our growth and their growth, right? So in terms of the karmic meanings of this week, transits, it's kind of like a spring cleaning, but it's in June, right? Clearing our house, knocking it down. The Sun-Pluto aspect brings ascent power, vibes, relationship behaviours to light that are holding us back, you know, karmic patterns, toxic karmic patterns of the ways we relate to ourselves and others, think and act and react, right? And it wants us to resolve them, to change them. Mars's aspects this week gives us the opportunity to heal how we have used our personal power and creative force across lifetimes, you know, so lifetimes, or even in this lifetime, if we misabused our personal power by controlling others or by people pleasing, or not by standing up for ourselves and empowering ourselves, or by resisting using our creativity or being too forceful in it, where we don't allow other people to use their creativity, right? So Venus's power to Chiron wants us to confront relationship patterns that have caused repeated wounded across incarnations, across lifetimes, right? And the Jupiter influence brings karmic reward for great past generosity, the times we've been kind to ourselves and others and use our wisdom and power in the right ways. And this can bring opportunities, good karma for some of you, that reflects your soul's accumulated merit rewards, you know. So some of you may just experience an inward feeling of feeling blessed, or something may happen, a resolution to an ongoing conflict, legal work matters and matters of the heart, something may get resolved this week. In terms of the spiritual and esoteric meanings, it opens up a portal for divine alchemy, allowing us to transform our base aspects of self into spiritual gold. So this means, you know, transforming our psychological, emotional and spiritual wounds into something that helps us grow and overcome our adversities, you know, rather than letting it hold us back or allowing it to hold us back. And Mars's biquintal to Neptune allows higher inspiration to flow from our higher self, from a higher power, from a philosophy or intellectual thought that we believe in or research, you know. And Mars's Chiron energy enables our warrior healer to integrate for the side of us that can heal but also be assertive, be warrior and stand up and brave and like, yeah, I've got this, you know. And the Venus Chiron parallel allows us to connect our personal love to universal compassion through the gateway of shared vulnerability. And the Sun aspect with Pluto and Jupiter represent the sacred dance of destruction and expansion growth, right? That characterizes spiritual growth and every type of growth, really, you know, across all the mystical traditions and psychological traditions as well. So ultimately, this week is powerful. It gives us a multi-dimensional, you know, of an opportunity to heal, create and transform, and the psychological, emotional, spiritual, physical and financial level. That's what multi-dimensional healing means in terms of, you know, astrology, yeah. And it allows us to grow while developing a more authentic relationship with both ourselves and others. The universe is basically saying this week, face your shadows, heal your wounds, express your unique gifts and prepare for growth, you know, but beyond what you currently believe is possible. So now I'm just going to read this week's mantras for each zodiac sign, but the way that I do it is based on the majority of energies in your chart. So some of you may have a chart that's dominant in more than one energy, so you may have a lot of planets in both fire and water signs, etc. So if you have most of your planets in Aries, Scorpion, Capricorn, for instance, read the mantras for all of these signs. If your planets are majority Aries and Taurus, then read those mantras because they may help you, you know. So if you got a lot of Aries energy in your chart this week, your mantra is heal old wounds with courage, use your fiery passion to transform your pain into power, lead with vulnerability and creativity this week. Taurus, ground yourself in financial discipline, avoid overspending and focus on resource transformation, transforming how you think about your possessions and money, and remember that your worth isn't in your wallet. Gemini, network like it's Coachella, share your ideas and connect with others. Remember to stay hydrated both literally and mentally. Cancer, protect your peace. Not everyone deserves your energy this week. Trust your intuition and set boundaries to safeguard your emotional well-being, but watch out for that passive aggressive and moodiness, right? Leo, you go, girl, as we used to say. Slay with your creativity, let your inner light shine, but don't forget to let others, bask in their own glory too, partake in their glory. And remember that collaboration is key, working with others is key, and allowing them to shine. Virgo, prioritize your health. The fifth coffee may seem tempting this week, but your body and mind deserve balance. Remember, balance is your superpower this week. Libra, balance your relationships, avoid people pleasing to prevent burnout, and remember that harmony, authentic harmony, comes from within, not others' approval. Scorpio, engage in deep, meaningful conversations. Trust takes time, so focus on building genuine connections rather than drama. Sagittarius, it's as always, the call to adventure with you guys, but first finish your laundry. Balance being spontaneous with responsibility in order to gain true freedom of mind, body and soul this week. Capricorn, lead with confidence, allow yourself to feel without judgment. I see you guys as the most emotional zodiac sign actually, but remember that crying is free and it's a sign of strength, not weakness. Aquarius, innovate, think outside of the box, because this is what you do best. Remember to touch grass sometimes. Nature is your friend, in grounding your vision. And Pisces, dream big, set deadlines to turn your visions into reality. Your creativity is a powerful force when focused and not scattered, so yeah. In terms of what content creators should talk about this week, you should focus on content that talks about transformation and healing. As the sun's contrapower out of Pluto is active for nearly 2 months, you can plan a long-term project that focuses around, relationships and behaviours and how we can transform those, how we can manage joint resources, joint money and possessions in a way that's healthy and not toxic. How we can become authentic in our living and deal with the things we hide, repress and hide and bury in that 8th house. How we can use our ego in a way that helps us rather than gets in the way of our growth. How we can become self-empowered in the right ways and not control others or allow others to control us, giving strategies and how we don't do those right. Talk about how we can transform ourselves through creativity and be inspired by our higher selves and our higher power. Talk about how we can channel spiritual insights, dreams and all of that into creative projects. How we can take mystical approaches to not only leading others but leading ourselves and becoming our best selves, like setting healthy routines, healthy bedtimes, wake up times, eating for our health rather than our death and stuff like that. We can talk about how we can heal through being brave in our expression and talking the truth, because we've got a lot of Mars energy this week, and the audience can really connect with content about turning personal wounds into strength, how we can be courageous in our vulnerability and heal through creative performance, whether it be using Jungian dance therapy or any form of therapy to express ourselves, or any form of creativity to heal ourselves. Can talk about how we can heal our romantic wounds, our intimacy wounds, especially our self-intimacy wounds, giving tips how we can love on ourselves and build on our inner self-worth and value. Talking about self-partnership, why it's important to become self-partnered. You can still have another romantic partner, but content about how important it is to love yourself and to forgive yourself and to manage yourself on an emotional, psychological and spiritual level, so you can always have yourself to fall back on when life's, because life always be lifing, right? Talk about and give strategies on how we can become authentic in relationships, how we can be more direct in our communication without hurting other people, how we can confront relationship, especially the pain points, the things that we don't want to confront in our relationships, the secrets and lies, because we fear losing the relationship, right? Content that's focused on helping us grow our resources or inner, emotional or other forms of security, you know, with the Sun power Jupiter lasting for a while, you can do weekly tutorials over the next 5 to 6 weeks, or educational series that helps us on how we can be open to growing and getting outside of our comfort zone, how we can deal with our repressed emotions and our childhood and other trauma, you know. And ultimately content this week that combines talk about transformation, which is represented by the Sun Pluto aspects, and healing through action, which is represented by Mars's touching Chiron, and spiritual creativity represented by the Mars Neptune aspect, right, and how we can renew our relationship with ourselves and others, that's represented by Venus and Chiron, and how we can just be more optimistic about goal growth and change, right, which is represented by the Sun Jupiter connection. So think transformative storytelling with practical takeaways that empower your audience to turn challenges into creative breakthroughs, right? So on the 8th of June, we've got Mars making a biquintal to Saturn, Venus making a semi-sextile to Neptune, Mercury making a semi-sextile to Uranus, and the Sun making a contra to Pluto, and Mercury making a conjunction to Jupiter. So as you can see, we've got a lot going on, but of course the Sun's power to Pluto, I've already talked about that. So yeah. So today it's given sort of like main character energy with Mars in Leo forming a creative angle to Saturn in Pisces. This is the universe giving us the go ahead this week to have brilliant communication, to have those conversations that matter, and you know, to be more spiritual and creative in our purpose and goals this week. Venus in Aries touching Neptune, as I said, and the Sun's power with Pluto allows us to work on changing what we need to change and be inspired in our communication, be more disciplined in our creativity and routine setting and sticking to our routine, you know. So holistically, today's energy wants us to sort of like expand our thinking in major ways. Mars is biquintal to Saturn, wants us to link our creative expression with spiritual discipline. Mercury semi-sextile to Uranus brings like flashes of genius and allows us to be more innovative in our thinking. Venus is semi-sextile to Neptune, allows us to navigate the tension that it brings between our desires and spiritual ideals and needs. And with the Sun's contra to Pluto, it challenges us to think about our values and identity over the next 5 to 6 weeks, right? But the positives of today's sort of like aspects gives us, you know, access to creative problem solving skills and allows us to be more inspired in our action, and we may find ourselves speaking with unusual wisdom and charisma. People can be drawn to us, we can be drawn to others, and this can bring innovative solutions to long-standing problems. But the challenge comes between us being overwhelmed with information today, right? Feeling the tension between being practical, meeting those needs, and meeting the needs of our emotions and psychological and spiritual ideals, right? And this can lead to power struggles. The best use of today's energies is to focus on important communication, creative projects, and, you know, mix to blend being practical with spiritual purpose and not being afraid to confront the deeper truths, you know. Psychologically, the Mars-Jupiter conjunction stimulates our rational mind and expands our perception, so allowing us to think and question our values and making changes to our values, you know. And it's sort of like this week's aspects in general and today's aspects activate our multiple levels of consciousness, you know. The Sun-Pluto aspect triggers our, you know, ability to do that shadow work that's needed, bringing the unconscious behaviours into awareness, you know, and it allows us to, you know, Jung would see this as a powerful individuation opportunity for us to come into ourselves and integrate certain elements while expanding our conscious, going beyond the personal ego, you know. So today's aspects gives us a chance to work through soul lessons related to how we communicate truth, which is represented by Mercury and Jupiter, right, and how we use our creative power, which is represented by Mars and Saturn, and how we deal with relationships in general. And it just just gives us a chance to grow karmically through creative expression and, working through any issues that we've got with using our power or controlling others or being controlled by others, So also today, today's energies allow us to have higher communication and vision. The Leo Pisces connection through Mars and Saturn represents the soul's journey from individual creative expression to universal compassion, Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini allows us to awaken to the higher mind, and Venus and Neptune meeting helps us to connect our personal love with divine love, and it just allows us to let go of our boundaries and merge into our oneness, but staying grounded, not allowing other people to overstep boundaries or overstepping other people's boundaries, and it just allows us just to be open to serving the higher purpose and reaching our highest potential. On the 9th of June, the Sun makes a sesquiquadrant to Pluto, the Moon enters Scorpio, Mercury makes a square to Saturn, and Venus makes a square to Pluto, and Mercury makes a square to Neptune as well. So today's aspects can sort of make us feel uncomfortable, but if we see it as astrological growing pains that are helping us level up, we can deal with the intensity that comes up today. So the Moon in Scorpio and Venus square Pluto, we can feel like our emotional and relationship landscape feels extra intense, like someone's turned up the volume on our deepest desires and fears. We can just experience power struggles in our relationships or feel drawn to transforming something about how we connect with others and how we allow people to connect with us. Maybe someone's overstepping your boundaries and you may want to deal with that today, or you may be overstepping someone's boundaries and they may want to deal with that. The need for us to merge with others can compete with our need for freedom and control as well, and this energy might have you catching feelings hard or questioning your deeper motivations in relationships. So instead of running away from this intensity, use it to understand what you truly want and need from others. Mercury's aspects today and Saturn's and Neptune aspects today can sort of make us feel like we're trying to text clearly while we're underwater, and we know we can't really do that unless your phone's water resistant, right? And our feelings may feel simultaneously restricted, limited and confusing. On one hand, Saturn demands structure and routine and proof for your ideas, and on the other hand, Neptune is blurring the boundaries today over the next few days as well, and this brings doubt into our thinking. So we might struggle to express ourselves clearly or feel misunderstood. This isn't the best day for making major decisions or signing contracts. Instead, use this energy to revise, edit and change your thinking, question assumptions and practice patience with both yourself and others when miscommunications happen, And the Sun sesquiquadrant to Pluto helps us but also brings intense pressure around the way we express ourselves and the way we use our personal power, and we may feel like our authentic self is bumping up against external control or internal fears, and power struggles can happen in all the areas of our life over the next few days, from our work to personal relationships, and there's a temptation to be manipulative or controlling to get what we want, so we have to just check ourselves if we are affected by this. The gift of this energy is that see it as an opportunity to recognize where you give your power away and where you may be misusing it, right? And by staying conscious, you can transform your relationship with power itself. The best use of today's energy is to be open to the intensity rather than resist it. Take time out for self-reflection, whether it be by journaling, meditation, screaming, Be mindful in your conversations. Think about what you say and how you react. Double check what you hear and what you say. And when you're facing power struggles, ask yourself what fears are being triggered here. Practice radical honesty with yourself about your motives, and practice radical honesty in general, and try and create an active listening space for you and others. And remember that this isn't a day for rushing decisions or forcing outcomes. Instead, it's about observing what's been revealed and transforming through awareness rather than control. Trust what feels right. Although it can be challenging to do this now, it's helping you grow into your higher self. On the 10th of June, Mars makes a biquintile to Neptune. Mars makes a trine to Chiron. The moon leaves via combustion, and Mercury makes a quincunx to Pluto, right? So today, again, it's bringing us mystical inspiration, helping us to continue healing through action. It also brings emotional relief, and it helps us to sort of like flow with our emotions and just flow with the day, you know, supporting once again us healing through communication and by practicing self-acceptance and self-awareness, you know. Mars's biquintile to Neptune can bring a direct download of creative inspiration. A biquintile is a 144 angle, you know, so this is nice sort of energy that helps us to be drawn and express ourselves using art, music or any other form of performance, especially when channeling spiritual or other higher wisdom, you know. It allows us to connect our confident self-expression, which is represented by Mars in Leo, right, with the mystical spiritual realms and energy, which is represented by Neptune in Pisces. It allows us to connect with that creative genius and divine inspiration, but it also brings challenges in terms of we might confuse ego-driven performance with genuine spiritual inspiration or get lost in fantasy rather than taking practical action. The best use of this energy is to do creative projects that require both confidence and spiritual depth, to be artistic in our healing practices, and leadership that inspires through vulnerability rather than trying to manipulate and control others, right? Mars is trying to Chiron, you know, adds to the healing energy and confident action taking we kind of like have this week. It allows us and supports us to confront those deep wounds that I've talked about, and it can just allow us to have unusual courage and creative flair and expression, you know. So it's a good energy to help us try out new creative expression or just any form of expression, the way we talk, the way we dress, whatever, you know. And it helps us overcome limitations that come up, especially in painful areas. It gives us the confidence to confront painful things, right, and to heal core wounds around identity and courage, you know. And we may find ourselves naturally taking the lead in healing situations or feeling like we can inspire others through sharing our healing journey. The challenge can come up when we sort of like, you know, just we can just be performative in vulnerability or using dramatic expression to avoid deeper work, and people can do that and we can just feel like, hey, you're not being authentic, you know. So the best use of today's energy is to be authentic, take brave action towards authentic healing, lead workshops or healing circles or express your healing journey through creative mediums, you know, Instagrams or TikToks, whatever, you know, but be authentic. The moon leaves via combustion today, so that's really good. It went in last week, so it just allows us to kind of provide the emotional space for healing through creative expression. Again, we can feel like we can breathe again now because we're less emotionally volatile, right, and we can be more stable in our emotional, psychological and spiritual expression as well. So we can use this energy to process emotional residue that's been left through the recent challenges of your life, or from the challenge of the moon being via combustion for the past 3 to 4 days, right? Mercury's quincunx to Pluto helps us kind of heal our emotions again, but first it can bring challenges because because we can feel like, awkward in our conversations, we can have power struggles in communication, and we can just have difficulty expressing deep truth slightly, because Queen Quartz energy always needs us to adjust, right, and change our approach. So what works in one communication conversation with, say, a parent won't work in a conversation with a lover. So it's about changing the way we say things today as well, without losing ourselves, and it can also give us deep insights into power, relationships and behaviours as well, and it can just help us change the way we communicate. So the best use of today's energy is to practice conscious communication, especially when dealing with difficult, challenging topics, and journal any psychological insights or anything else that comes from exploring the deeper truths today. On the 11th of June, Venus makes a parallel to Chiron, the moon enters void of course, there's a full moon, while it's technically void of course in Scorpio, but then the moon moves into Sagittarius at 3:41 today, and Mercury makes a sextile to Venus, and Venus makes its exact parallel to Chiron at 2:39 a.m. And I talked in depth about this earlier this week because it's one of the aspects that's influencing us a lot this week, So yeah, if you want to know more about the full moon and what to do, check out the separate audio as always. So ultimately today allows us to sort of like have improved communication if we've been having struggles. Some of you would have been, because a lot of energies this week with the sun's power to Pluto especially is bringing those hard conversations to the surface and secrets and stuff, although this energy is perfect for research, right? But today's energies allow us to talk about our feelings and heal our wounds through being supportive to our own emotional needs and others' emotional needs as well. The full moon allows us to sort of like have a exhale moment on this week. We can have clarity about situations that have been confusing us for weeks, and with the moon entering void of course, it's wanting us to slow down and take our time to process whatever insights we get rather than act on them immediately, although sometimes full moon energy wants us to release straight away. But I think it's best to slowly make the changes. This is how we make sure we're making the right ones and we're implementing the changes we need slowly and effectively into our day-to-day life. And with the moon entering Sagittarius, it allows us to seek meaning and truth, and have emotional breakthroughs, but we may feel ungrounded because Sagittarius energy can always want us to do everything fast, right? So it's time to take time out rather than push ahead. But for some of you, you may need to push ahead because that may be the only way you make the changes and get outside of your comfort zone, by blowing down what needs to be blown down and tear down right now. Mercury sextile to Venus allows us to have more charm, gain more clarity in our relationships and creative expression. So this is good to have healing conversations, and be more diplomatic without being people pleasery, and allows us to express our feelings with grace, and in a nice way basically. But the downside is that we may lean towards telling people what they want to hear. So make sure you don't do that, because the best use of today's energy is to say how it is, have a good little cry, and reflect on what we need to do rather than start things all at once, but also do the things that expand our mindset, and broadens our value system, and have those heart-to-heart conversations that confront the healing themes that are triggered by Venus Chiron energy, which is issues with our inner values, how we relate in our relationships, And ultimately today is the astrological permission slip to heal through honest communication and emotional authenticity. The key to today is to stay present with our feelings while maintaining perspective on the bigger picture of our personal growth journey. On the 12th of June, all that happens is the moon enters void of course at 4:56 p.m. On the 13th of June, Mercury makes a quintile to Chiron at 4:51. The Sun makes a square to the Moon's North Node at 10:48, and Venus makes a semi-square to the moon's north node at 5:47, right? So this again allows us to heal the feelings that we've been struggling with for ages. You know, it also boosts our creativity and our ability to communicate sensitive subjects, talk about sensitive things without feeling too much emotional ouches and pain, but negatively overthinking our pain can just just make us keep it all in, and this energy wants us to let it all out, or we may talk ourselves into circles over explaining, so rather than getting stuck in our head, use this energy to journal about our past pain, have heart to heart with people we trust, or find clever ways to express what's been hard to say. So ultimately this aspect is giving emotional glow up through words, vibes, and this is perfect for healing conversations that can hit us authentically and differently right now, So also today there's a tension between our identity and destiny, with the sun making a square to the north node, and the sun's in Taurus and the north node's in the revolutionary growth glow up sign Aquarius, and we can feel like there's an astrological tug of war between our comfort zone, which Taurus loves, and our future self, which Aquarius loves, right? So the transiting Taurus sun wants security in the familiar, while the soul's GPS, the north node, is basically screaming, take the unexplored path. The tension may leave us feeling low-key stressed about whether to stick with what or leap into the unknown. The struggle is real but necessary, and this aspect is basically pushing us to examine where we are clinging to outdated habits that no longer serve us or serve our evolution, our growth. Instead of digging our heels in and staying in our comfort zone, ask ourselves, what security blankets am I ready to outgrow? The energy is literally our astrological alarm clock saying wake up to your future. In terms of Venus's semi-square to the north node, kind of brings relationship challenges. We can have a subtle friction between what we want in relationships and where our soul needs to grow, So our heart may be craving passion and independence, which is big Aries energy, because Venus is in Aries and the north node is in Aquarius, right? While our spiritual path is, calling us towards a more teamwork, humanitarian relationships, connections, right? So we may feel slightly annoyed in our relationships without understanding why, and this is the universe basically asking us to level up our relationship style. Instead of getting frustrated, use this energy to notice where your relationship patterns may be blocking your evolution, your growth. Maybe it's time to bring more newness, freshness into your love life, or consider how your relationships connect to the bigger purpose. So this transit is giving relationship realignment for your future energy. So thinking about what you can change about your relationships, letting go for some of you, or the ways that you relate to people, the way you relate to yourself as well, how you talk, how you respond, question that as well. So ultimately today again allows us to heal through creative communication and align our identity with our soul's journey, and upgrade our relationships to match our evolving purpose. So on the 14th of June, the moon enters Capricorn, and the sun's parallel to Jupiter is exact at 8:09 a.m, right? And remember, this leaves us on the 17th of July, and the sun's in Taurus and Jupiter's in Gemini. So the moon in Capricorn is Capricorn, Saturn ruled energy, wants us to can turn our feelings into spreadsheets. So positively, we can crave more structure and routine, so it's perfect for smashing goals or maybe condoing our lifestyle. Our emotions can feel manageable, like a really chilled Netflix documentary or rom-com, if there is such a thing, instead of a chaotic reality. But negatively, we can risk becoming emotional robots, if we move our heart to hustle we can end up with a stiff neck and soul, you know. So the best use of the Capricorn moon energy is to plan your grow up strategy, journal, budget, or reorganize your pantry. Just remember to hug someone, even if it's yourself, you know. And as I said, the sun's power to Jupiter is helping us sort of like, you know, be like Babe. We are that girl with the sun in Taurus and Jupiter in Gemini vibing in sync. Our confidence gets a Gucci belt upgrade, you know. So positively, our luck magnet can be activated. We can have opportunities to pop up like unread texts, and Taurus grounds our hustle, and Gemini brings our hot girl or hot person summer, you know, allowing us to network. But negatively, make sure you don't gossip, overpromise things, and swear you do something like, oh, I'm going to start a podcast in 2 weeks, you know, but then you ghost that idea. So the best use of this energy is to pitch ideas, travel, or learn something new. Using the sun's power out to Jupiter as our personal hype squad, manifesting what we need to manifest with practical action, and the moon in Capricorn is helping us stay grounded and expand, right? Also do shadow work when the moon's in Capricorn. We may judge our messy moments, but we have to balance this with you know, self-compassion. So yes, be disciplined in, you know, calling yourself out, but also be disciplined with giving you that yourself that self-love and care that you need as well. And Jupiter's optimism can blind us to red flags, so make sure, or red carpets, you know, if you like to watch maths. Australia, guilty pleasure of mine, but yeah, so remember to check those details and vibes, you know. So ultimately, as we go into the weekend, be gentle with yourself, try and repair any arguments you had this week. Look at the ways that you stop others from being self-empowered, how you may stop yourself from being self-empowered as well. And remember to trust in the process of healing and being open to newness, and the past doesn't have to equal the future if you're open to change, you know. So just trust in the magic of life, and, you know, just try and do your best this week and enjoy the weekend. So yeah, that's the end of the weekly scopes from the 8th of June to the 14th of June. Take care and see you next time.